started visiting the hospital more.
Oh.
Like, what's this all about?
Oh. We're good. Yep.
Okay. We're good.
All right, we are going to start over again. Due to technical difficulties, we are now up on YouTube. So I'd like to call to order our May 11th, 2023 West Fargo Library Board meeting. We will do a call to order. Larry?
Here.
Tony?
Here.
Alana?
Here.
I'm here, and Mandy.
Here.
All right, we have all present. So we're looking next on our agenda to approve the order of the agenda.
I'll move to approve the order of the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Comments or questions?
I would like to amend my motion by requesting to table items 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 12. And we'll need a second for that amendment.
Second.
So we have to vote on that.
Hold on.
Okay.
I'd like to also add, because our director is not here, the 1, 10, and 11 as well,
To table?
to table that.
I will accept
So,
that as a friendly amendment.
Thank you.
Second.
Any other comments or questions? So then, not to amend your amendment, I'd also like to add an agenda item. I'd like to add an agenda item of public comment at the end of our meeting here.
Okay.
We do not have current policy around public comment, so we would open up public comment, give everyone a set amount of time for public comment.
Shall we vote on that?
Yes, I think we have an amendment and an amendment to the amended. So,
So we'll vote on the public comment.
and the amended
Agenda order.
agenda, yep. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. So agenda passes. Next, we look at consent agenda, so we approve both the April 13th minutes and approval of financial reports.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Consent agenda passes. So now we will move on to our new do we need any discussion on the old business? Sorry, the FMLA discussion.
No, at the last meeting, we decided to table it indefinitely. We don't have a director here to share any more information, and so I think we can actually remove it from old business altogether and see if it's brought up in the future.
Sounds great. It is not an action item, so we will just leave it at old business. Next, we'll move into new business, so we're going to focus on 2, 4, and 9. So number 2 is a staff request for the 2024 budget, and it is an action item. And I think we welcome Kirsten up to the podium.
Hello, everybody. My name is Kirsten Hennigan. I'm the Adult and Patron Services Manager at the library. I'll be presenting a requested action in regard to our service desk staffing. Under normal circumstances, this proposal wouldn't come in the middle of the year. It would come and be a part of our FY24 budget request in the next couple months when we do our budget request for it to be effective in January. However, we currently have 2 vacancies in our service desk staffing, as well as I'm anticipating a 3rd vacancy in that staff of 7. We've had vacancies as well in our full-time staff and a few of our part-time staff, so we've been underspent in our salaries budgets. Today we'll be talking through this presentation, which you guys all have a printed copy of, but all of the supporting documents can be found in the memo provided in the agenda, as well as the position descriptions themselves, the organizational chart, and the draft schedule that would support these roles. So in this presentation today, we will talk through some of the goals in that recommendation, the history of the service desk, the challenges that the library faces, as well as the recommendation itself. I have the organizational chart in this outline, but it's actually in your guys' packet, so you have that org chart in there for a before and after. We'll take a look at the future outlook if these positions are to be approved, as well as the financial impact and opportunity cost if there is no action taken today. So first, with the goals of this recommendation, the primary goals of this recommendation include an investment in our full-time positions to support our service point of the library. The community thinks of our services. They think first of books and physical circulation. We need to continue to invest in that primary service point, especially as we look to the future and the prospects of that new building. I know we struck that from the agenda today, but that is a future discussion that we're continuing to have with the city. So thinking about that investment, we need to continue to have full-time staff at our service desk. Second, it's establishing a sustainable service desk staffing schedule that is repeatable and serves the needs and workflow of the public. I'll get closer, Larry. Third, we need to restore continuity for our library operations of the service desk. Since it's the primary service point to the public, we are prioritizing its operation over the other operations in the library. So programming and outreach are often affected if there are issues at that service point. Lastly, we need a proactive solution to disrupting those services and having a goal to invest back into those roles. You guys already approved those full-time positions within programming and outreach, so wanting to do those roles as they are intended by you approving them instead of using them to subsidize our service desk. So let's talk a little bit about the history of the service desk. In here, we have, before we address any of those challenges further, we'll take a walk through that history. Prior to 2015, it's so not pictured on this slide, that we also had 2 lead library assistant positions who worked 20 hours with those additional 5 library assistants. In 2015, those 2 lead positions were combined to be a circulation supervisor. Between the circulation supervisor and library services managers, those were the folks that provided those supervisory responsibilities at the service desk. From 2015 to 2020, those part-time employees positions grew from 5 to 8, all at about 3.4 or 0.4 FTE each. In 2022, you guys approved that full-time evening circulation supervisor to allow LSMs and our librarians to focus back in on their core responsibilities at the library. That change has been incredibly helpful, allowing us to focus on our programming and outreach, and you've seen that in your impact reports of the attendees that we've been able to reach with those investments. In 2022, we also chose not to refill one of the part-time assistants that left. Instead, we chose to allocate those hours back into the service desk to increase the hours per person serving at the service desk. At that point, there's a few times where we had library staff only working 8 hours a week, so difficult to maintain their knowledge of the library operations. So if approved, the service desk would have 2 full-time library assistants and 4 part-time library clerks. A little bit more about that history. As retirements and positions were repurposed, that isn't shown in that history, but there were other folks that also subsidized our service desk aside from those part-time positions. So we used to have a few folks that ended up retiring that also have a service desk shift. Prior to 2019, we also had the admin assistant as well as the cataloging team serving a shift at the service desk. So it's continued to be an all library hands on deck in order to staff our primary service point. So prior to 2022, that request for the evening circulation supervisor, those operations were really contingent on our LSM and librarian staff to keep that service point open, again, retracting from their primary responsibilities. In 2020, or since 2020, we've onboarded 11 library assistant part-time positions. Largely, those are voluntary departures. Most of them are looking for full-time work elsewhere. There's only one of those positions that was involuntary in that attrition. So predominantly those folks are either making a career switch or going into the field full-time after their studies and things of that. So constantly onboarding and rehiring and training, and so that continuity can often be disrupted. Back to those challenges. As we talk about those challenges, and you've heard about the history from the various years to the service desk, we have primary issues that we've identified as the lack of FTE to properly staff that service point. We've had a challenge in order to have the proper amount of staff in order to keep the continuity of the library open. So it's often to be 1 library assistant on at a time, where ideally we would have 2 in the future service model. When library assistants leave to pursue their next opportunity, the service desk schedule is piecemealed back together. So if somebody leaves 3 shifts, we're hiring for those 3 exact shifts back in. So we're hoping that that schedule works for those people as they come back in. The challenge with that is that they may say it works in an interview, and then they come in and change, and we start onboarding them and training them, and that schedule doesn't work out in the long-term plan. So that then contributes back to our attrition of that service desk point. With that constant rehiring, that continuous change from also COVID and previous directors and different directions of the library has added on to that stress at the service desk. It's been difficult to continually meet patron expectations because the world has changed since 2019 of what service looks like and how we continually serve them. So that need for more investment into the service desk is very much apparent when we're interacting with patrons. And we think about, like I said earlier, the disruption of our library services with vacancies. I'll talk a little bit more about that when it gets to the opportunity cost of that. So with those challenges and the history of the service desk, you've seen our sort of stuck together with bubble gum and duct tape in order to make sure that we're continually serving the public at our service point. By no means is that a con on the service that we've provided. The people that use our library love our staff and the service that we provide. That is one of the best parts of working at the library, but it's not sustainable as it currently exists. So the point of this is to create that sustainability and stability for our service point. Wanting to have those 2 full-time positions, so the action here would be to approve the job description of those full-time library assistants. The position itself is very similar to the part-time roles that we have. Only slight changes have been made, but the whole core of those job descriptions retains to be the same, so the pay grade is all of the same. The library clerks would be more part-time and therefore having lower expectations and lower responsibilities for those positions, therefore more of a lower grade on those positions. So the ask here is that you would approve those job descriptions and then repurpose the allocated funds from those roles to these new 6 roles at the library service desk. All of these changes have been in consultation with Dustin Scott. He's been a part of those conversations. We've also consulted with Ryan Graff, who's been our consultant in helping us identify the budget numbers for the 2024 service desk and changes to the staffing for the future budget requests that we will have in the coming months. So what does that look like? It would impact our supervisors. So we would still retain that AM and PM supervisor. Their ratio to staff to supervisor would be 3-to-1. So they would have 3 staff, 1 of the library assistants and 2 of the library clerks would report to them, thus improving the communication that they have and the time for training. The schedule for those roles, the 2 full-time roles, 1 of them would be the same exact schedule as the AM person as well as the evening person. So 9 to 5:30 for that AM person and 12:30 to 9 for the evening person. The part-time clerks would have a flex schedule between Monday and Thursday, so having 2 shifts, either 2 AM shifts or 2 evening shifts, as well as covering Friday hours. And then 1 weekend a month, whereas the library assistants would have 2 weekends a month. Therefore, full-time employees having greater responsibility in order to serve our main service point. The changes that we've made here were not taken lightly. We looked at 5 different service models with the staffing hours that we have to take pros and cons of each of those schedules. No schedule is perfect. There's always going to be a con in distributing those hours, but we looked at hours that were most busy, take a look at the disbursement of those evening or the weekend hours in order to then have an equitable covering for those part-time employees. So wanting to have those schedules be repeatable instead of 3 hours this day, 3.5 hours the next day, but having something that is set and standard. All of those AM shifts begin before we open, so any of that admin responsibilities within the library that need to be done, so straightening shelves, any training that we may need to do, or one-on-one meetings with supervisors could still take place. And then for the evening shift folks, when they come in, there's 2 library assistants that are on for that first half an hour that they arrive. So there's still that flex time for those clerks to have time with their supervisor one-on-one if necessary. So intentional about where our overlaps are so that that schedule does pan out. These changes would take the service desk investment of 0.4 FTEs across those folks to increasing it to 5.6 FTE dedicated to our circulation service point. It is the most primary point that we serve the public, and so it has the most investment from an FTE perspective. That would take the library total FTE from 17.6 to 18.4, which if you looked at the 2020 10-year staffing plan, that still puts us actually behind where we anticipated to be at this point in time. We had planned to be at 20 FTE by 2023. That is in the board packet, the 2020 staffing plan. There's a link in there. But this number would still put us behind what that estimated staffing plan would have been for that 10-year staffing plan, which was created by 2 directors ago, Carissa. So as we look at that future outlook, we also have a financial impact, so which is where often questions remain. So as we look at the current financial impact, that first line here is the 7 library assistants that are budgeted now at 0.4 FTE each, so a total of 2 FTE total. It approximately costs $15,000 a year to fund each of those part-time staff. If we're looking at the spent funds and reallocated funds, we've spent under what we would have budgeted for that line item through May. And then as we look at the second line there, what it would cost to fund our 4 library clerks through the rest of the year is approximately $32,500, give or take. These are very rough numbers. I rounded up on quite a few of them. And then funding the 2 full-time library assistants would be about $63,000, which includes everything. So from all of the salary plus all of the benefits. So that is the whole number altogether, and that number is broken down in there. So we're looking at the total cost here and where we are spent, but budget-wise. In the memo, I've marked out how much we are underspent. We should be at 33% in each of those lines, but we are at 24 and 25% in both the full-time permanent salaries as well as the part-time salaries. So we are well underspent in each of those lines through April. So as we look to that, the budget request in there has the specific dollars from each line that would be funded over, but it would estimate that we would be overspent in our permanent salaries by about $4,000, but still underspent in our part-time salaries by about $25,000. Net about $20,000 that we're still underspent by putting this stability into our service desk. So there's still budget left if there's anything that may come up throughout the rest of the year, but that we're covered and have a sustainable service desk model at our main service point. As we look at what the financial cost is, we also have an opportunity cost. As we already look at the vacancies that we currently have, we've already reduced our adult programming to the public by 50% with those changes. So June through August, when we're our busiest, we're providing 50% less than what we wanted to be providing them already. We've had to reduce our Little Red Reading Bus route by 25% due to those vacancies as well, where we'll need to use youth and adult services staff at our service desk to stay open. Without these changes in the staffing structure, we're looking at an additional reduction to programming for both public services for both youth and adult programming. Those librarians and library service managers will be needed to keep the library open. If there are illnesses or out of offices with those staff, that would result also in a potential reduction of hours to the public. If the positions and structure remains the same, we're looking at not having those filled until maybe June or early July, of which then we're still requiring those same folks to cover during that time. I will pause for questions. I know I gave you a lot of numbers, a lot of data, a lot of structure, a lot of changes. I also gave you a staffing schedule, of which those 3 schedules, the first one is what it currently is if we're fully staffed. As you can tell in that schedule, there are times where we only have 1 library assistant on. If you take that second page, all of the red outlined items are where we currently have vacancies and 1 additional expected vacancy by the end of the month. The covering that's in there is predominantly our adult services librarian, who's graciously donated her evenings to many of those nights to make sure that we can stay open until 9 p.m. each night. And then the last page in there is what the staffing model would look like. There would be overlap with those 2 full-time library assistants in the afternoon hours, but in the morning and the evening, there would be a library clerk and library assistant on serving the public. What stays the same is our circulation supervisor schedule. So where we have our AM person coming in at 9 until 5:30, and our evening person from 12:30 to 9, who I can say we did interview for that position to refill it, and person is verbally accepted. I can't say their name just yet, but anticipated to hopefully start it by the end of the month.
All right, so are there questions? Yes.
So in the consent agenda, we approved that we were overspent in budget line item 641 for furniture that was ordered last year and came in this year. On the financial impact, you list item or line 110, which we used to pay for that. Did you account for us already taking money out of there, even though we hadn't, because we did it as part of the consent agenda tonight?
Yeah, it's not in that final $20,000, but that amount of money would be dedicated towards that. Where we're underspent there would additionally cover that. So that.
So we're still under, as far as you understand?
Yes.
We're still underspent in 110, even though we just allocated money to cover something else,
Yes,
and that it would still cover your proposal here?
Correct.
Or the proposal?
yes.
So I have a question about FTE.
Yeah,
Yep. So we have a current staffing FTE of 17.6.
Yes.
Is that correct?
yes,
And was that fully staffed throughout this fiscal year?
correct. That is with all of the current positions filled, all of the, including part-time and full-time. If all of those positions are filled.
Are filled.
Yes,
If they are filled.
if they are
If they
filled.
are filled.
Or, yeah, well, I mean, regardless if they are filled. That is the number we have for positions that we have available at the library.
So were 100% of our positions filled this fiscal year,
At one point, yes.
but not throughout the whole year?
Correct.
So what I'm looking at is like in future, when we budget for 17.6 or that 18.4, like, is that an accurate then underspending amount?
Oh,
You know, so if we're fully staffed at 17.6 and we're paying people and they're here, would we actually be underspent by that much? And do we then actually have enough money to move to an FTE of 18.4? And that may be something that we can't answer right now, but that would be something I'm curious about.
yeah.
Around that FTE and what we have budgeted from year to year. And if we are fully, because we want to be fully staffed. And so if we're fully staffed at 17.6, would we have actually been underspent by 24,000?
That would also come down to benefit dollars too.
It absolutely
Yeah,
does.
so not all of those benefit dollars
Correct.
are fully funded or not fully reflected there. So
Yes.
not everybody has like a full family insurance package, so there's many.
Absolutely.
So that
There's a lot of
numbers that go
variables.
into that
Yes.
number.
But I think for us to make any kind of decisions, like something like that, we'd have to look into the future, because if we would approve anything on here, it's approving up to that 18.4, and I don't know what that would put our budget for then the next fiscal year, is my question.
The request is with them with the largest benefits package as well. So we budget with the largest benefit package. So the reality of our budget ever being fully spent out of those lines was low, considering the diversity of our staff and whether they're single or with a family, that they're getting benefits from the city. But we budget that way to have them be
Absolutely.
fully
And I
benefited.
appreciate that. Other questions? Mandy?
So it seems we've received a number of emails in regards to this item as far as people being unsure about these proposed changes. So how are you addressing that with the staff and their concerns?
Certainly. We have a monthly service desk meeting. So we have two, actually, because we can't all get together because of all the different schedules. So with that meeting, we actually had one following our staff training on Tuesday, but I only had half of the team together for that. So we had a second conversation yesterday. Staff have also expressed that frustration with me as well. It's not taken with any sort of lightness. I fully understand that this has impacts on everybody, as well as the library. This is not in any way a personal change, but it's based on when we have the busiest times in our library and taking a look at how if we were to have full-time staff to allocate their schedules and staff appropriately, then backfilling with those part-time staff. We will continue to need part-time staff until we have, the magical unicorn of having all full-time staff at the library. But I expect that's not a reality, considering budget constraints on that front. So we will continue to have those part-time positions. The history has shown that we have filled those positions based on individual schedules instead of the needs of the organization. So as we move forward, we're trying to put the needs of the organization first and the needs of the public first as we look at the service schedule as we have it. I understand that is very challenging, and it's not something that I'm excited about in the sense of I know it impacts people, but I'm excited about it for the opportunity that it provides for our public and the ways that we can continue to serve them and hopefully get some of those larger projects done that we've been trying to do for several years. But we've continued to have staff conversations, and those frustrations have also been expressed to me. So not that I'm not disregarding those, but we have taken them in consideration as we look at the schedule.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Oh,
I
yep.
guess I have
Mandy?
another one. So being that we're in a transition period with one director leaving and then, being unsure about our future with our new director, do we think the timeliness of this is appropriate for right now to be making major decisions with staffing and changes? I mean, I guess I don't.
Well, I agree with your concern, because we also put the budget line item on pause, and that would directly impact that. I am worried about the impact of this into next year's budget. And without having a full-time director on board currently.
Do we have a timeline for that yet?
I have not heard anything from HR, and I know that they're working on their own hiring as well.
Sure.
So I have not heard, and I can certainly check into a timeline. The last that I had requested is that it was posted for 10 working days.
The position
Here's
is open and it closes tomorrow.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
how long we can wait? Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say these staffing proposals are not new. They're not only my idea. That is something that has been in the conversation since prior my start here. It's been something since Sandra's reign as library director, as wanting more of those full-time staff at our service desk. My anticipation, if a library director is hired and comes into this role, they're going to take a look at that and say, we need more full-time staff here. It's not unprecedented that we have full-time staff at our service desk. And that is the standard in most other public libraries.
Yeah, and please don't take anything this is not personal at all.
Agreed. I actually am not against your proposed changes at all. I'm just concerned about from the emails I've heard from staff as well as just the timing with the director. Those are my concerns, so I'm not sure
And
how we deal with that.
I would agree, but I also have the financial, like the impact into the next fiscal year, increasing the FTE. And I know, I see the financial analysis and that we have worked with the city as well, but I still have that concern. Other comments or questions?
I guess I have another
Go
one.
ahead.
So if this is an item, I mean, we do have people here. I mean, if people were here to speak to this item specifically, I guess I'd
Yeah.
rather have them speak and hear before we make any action or vote. But I don't know how the rest of the board
Yeah,
feels, so-
any comments on that? We can move the one public comment section, if it has to do with this, up.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that.
Okay.
Okay.
So we'd like to open the floor at this time for any public comment
leave.
with this action item of the staffing request for 2024.
Is there a
2024.
time limit per
Yeah,
comment?
I'll probably do a 3-minute time limit, is what I'm used, and again, I'm following really my school board experience.
I just want to make sure that the public
Yeah.
Yes, that
understands.
would be what the city would do.
Yeah, so we'll have a 3-minute time limit on anyone's public comment. And anyone can come on up. And please introduce yourself, your position, and/or your residence.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you for letting us comment on this proposal. My name is Lisa Stoffer. I am a part-time library assistant at the West Fargo Public Library. I have been there a little over 5 years. I was at the meeting where we were told about this and listening to it again tonight. What stands out to me is, and you have not been told, I didn't hear that you were told, what is going to happen to the part-timers who are there currently. We were told in our meeting on Tuesday that we will be unemployed beginning June. Our positions are going away. We will be terminated. If we want to apply for these jobs, we certainly can. If we are hired, we will take a pay cut. We asked if these positions could be made available to us internally before it went public, which is a fair question. There have been recently openings in the Adult Services Department, and those positions were opened and filled internally. But we are not being afforded that same courtesy. We have to apply online after we have been let go, and then we may or may not get a job. Again, if we do, we will take a pay cut. That is the part that we wanted you to be aware of, because that is what we are facing. I have been there over 5 years. I have coworkers here with me who have been there even longer. We enjoy our jobs. We love our patrons, and we would like to be able to continue to serve them and work with them. At no point have we been involved in any discussion about how schedule changes can happen, how we can potentially adjust our schedules to maybe fit this. It's been an entire directive. We have been told, we have not been asked. And that is what we want you to be aware of. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. And then please introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name's Wendy Robinson. I've been a library assistant like Lisa for a little over 6 years. And again, I'm not sure you're getting the entire picture. When we had the 7 part-time library staff, it was just fine. There were enough of us working our availability that if somebody was gone, somebody else would step in, take that shift. I don't believe we've had the full staffing all year. I did ask Kirsten at one point, after the last library assistant left, well, are we going to hire again? No, it looks better when I go before the board if we don't have the full staffing, because I want to ask for full-time people. So I feel she's being a little disingenuous in what she's telling you. She's going to terminate us anyway, so I guess this is the time to be honest about it. There is a general sort of sense of, you know your place, you're on the bottom of the totem pole, do not speak up to authority, because otherwise you're going to lose your job. Well, our jobs are being taken away. The schedule that is suggested for the part-time library clerks, even if we were to accept it, it's been done in a way that I don't think any of us could make the hours work with our availability. 2 of us have full-time jobs, work evenings. There is a Friday daytime shift. When I asked Kirsten about that yesterday, she just said, well, we can't keep going on with this piecemeal staffing. The piecemeal staffing has worked extremely well the whole time I've been there. It's only just very recently it's become a problem. As Lisa said, we love our jobs, we love our patrons, we love our library. It's a public service, it's not a business. We shouldn't be treated like widgets that can just be interchangeably moved around. And I'm sure if our patrons knew what was happening, they would be outraged, because they love us and we love them. So, thank you.
Thank you. Other public comments?
Hello, my name is Lindy Williams. I'll be a library assistant with the West Fargo Library in 8 years as of this summer. Similarly to what my coworkers were mentioning, I have some similar concerns. One of the biggest ones for me at the moment is that the proposed timing that was given to us for this would be that we would be making this changeover where our positions would end as of June 8th, which would be after the summer reading program has already begun, which is the busiest time of the year for us. Because of that, it would mean that we would be changing all of the desk staffs, what they're in charge of, what they do on a daily basis, all of our schedules, and potentially the composition of those people, and we don't know how many people would have to be trained on to be able to staff those hours. Part of that problem was also that we were informed 2 days ago at this meeting that the applications for those positions would open in 2 weeks' time. We already currently have problems with trust and with keeping people in those positions, and we've been working with staff for months, and which is great, and I appreciate that everyone is speaking with us about trying to fix those problems. But going into this knowing that we will not be given a chance to apply beforehand says a lot about whether or not we are valued in that system. One of my coworkers will be more heavily affected by this than others, as she just had to go into emergency surgery. That will leave her with at least 2 weeks of expected healing time, which will disproportionately affect her ability to apply for these positions. Let's see. Yeah, trust, timing, and then my coworker who won't be able to be there necessarily.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comments? Okay, thank you. I do appreciate our public speaking up. We still have, it is titled as an action item, and so we do need to make an action.
It is my understanding that these positions are under the library director, according to the organizational chart, and currently we do not have a library director here. And although I appreciate all of the information, I think it's only right to table this until we are more informed of the situation. So I move to table it.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second to table. Any other comments or questions?
I guess my comment on this, I support tabling this, that we need to put it aside, but I think it needs to be reworked, and I don't think the way that they're structuring it works for our staff, and I think our staff needs to be more involved as far as, I don't like hearing that people are going to be let go and then have to reapply for their jobs. That concerns me a lot. So for me to be able to support a change in programming, it would have to be reworked a lot. So I think tabling it is the right decision for sure.
And just please know that as a board that we are here to follow, we are here to enforce or work on policy. And I don't want us to get too in the weeds in terms of like scheduling, but our goal is to keep the library open as long as possible, but also to listen to both patrons and workers of the library too. But I do want us to really make sure that we are looking at our library policy and really working within those parameters too. And I would agree that within the org chart that we would want a full-time director on board to make these decisions with. So we have a motion, a second on board. We've had comments. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes to table it.
Okay, so how does this affect, how does our tabling of this motion
Effect number 4.
affect staffing, and how can the board aid in the decision-making process? Is that a role for the board? Does a subcommittee need to be formed? Does the president of the board need to meet with the interim director and staff, or staff?
And HR.
And HR? What do we do now?
I think I would agree further work needs to be done, and it could be that myself or any other, we can have a small committee member meet with our interim director and HR to talk about next steps. And then I would want to talk about next steps, but then communication plans and then impact to the financial piece. So I am willing to do that. Does anyone else want to join? And that's okay. If not. Larry, were you going to say something?
I'd love to join, but I'm still working for a bit, so.
Okay. Well, I'll take that as next steps, that I'll contact Kirsten, and then I will work with the city's HR department on working on plans of communication, plans of looking at this, and then our financial impact.
And with staff concerns, is there a policy within the employee handbook of where they can go with those?
Yes,
I don't
I'd
have
like
an
us to
employee.
look.
I don't want to discount any employees, but I want to make sure that they have the right track to follow. Do you have, okay.
And thank you, because I do want us to follow handbook and policy.
Certainly. I can address that question. In regard to a couple of the comments that were made too, when transitions occur like this, the positions are graded and then it falls onto the scale within 5% of their current salary. So that's process for that element of it. When it comes to staff grievances, there actually isn't a grievance policy within our employee handbook. So in typical world, those things would be routed up to the library director. If they were to go around the library director, there is not a formal policy for that or procedure. I would recommend that they go to one of you or all of you. Either is a great option, but there isn't a formal policy for that in place regarding any sort of issues of that nature. So there are some challenges with that. There was a question, I think, regarding positions being open to the public. Those positions were really based on how many we currently have and based on how many positions we would need to hire for. So that is the anticipation for those open interviews versus internal interviews. The library assistant was posted on March 29th and then closed April 5th. We interviewed those candidates. Fortunately, this proposal came up after those interviews as well. Just for the record.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, and so I am used to working in a system with a grievance policy, so that might be something that, as we work with HR, to talk about.
So I just want to clarify.
Yeah.
The library and the city do not have a grievance policy at this time.
Correct.
Okay.
I just opened up the employee handbook and I don't see a tab for
Okay.
grievance policy.
It was something that was discussed prior to Jenna Wilm's departure, but obviously those policy changes did not go into place before her departure. So it was something that the future HR director would need to add to that employee handbook.
Thank you. So again, I still hear next steps as being working with Kirsten and then our HR department in terms of financial impact, grievance procedure, and or like what are some listening sessions with staff too. I think we've done that in the past as well. And we can move forward with that as a small group. Okay, thank you.
Sounds great.
With that happening with this action, do you guys want to discuss action item 4 before we present that?
I would make a motion to,
Can somebody say what action item
sorry,
4
yep,
is?
it's the library marketing and communications specialist job description, and it's an action item to approve that
Okay.
job description. So I would make a motion to table the approval of that job description till further notice.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Any other comments? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes. So then we will move to number 9, which is our senior outreach report.
All right, and I have to apologize, I do need to take off.
Hey,
for a
yes, thank
child's
you.
event. All right,
All
thank
right.
you. All right.
Enjoy the concert.
Thank you.
So we will move on to our senior outreach report.
Don't mind me while I just scroll through all of this to
Okay.
get to the right report. So many reports.
It's page 65 on mine.
Now I broke it. It's loading. Ah, here we go. Okay, so this senior outreach impact report. Oh, my name is Kirsten Hennigan. I'm the Adult and Patron Services Manager at the library. I have been overseeing outreach since 2020 with Erin Thossenson, who joined us as an outreach services assistant. Their position began in December 2020. When they joined the organization, we had a very abbreviated version of what outreach looked like due to the pandemic. So there was a lot of lobby stops instead of our normal, or door drops instead of our lobby stops that we would normally provide. So the goals of our outreach delivery services to our senior facilities include promoting lifelong learning through reading, providing accessible services outside of our building, and creating social interaction within our senior living communities. When we took a look at those needs after 2020, we took a survey of the sites that we visited and asked more what they were looking for. And the asks they had were more around activities, wanting more things that brought the people within their organization together after so much isolation due to COVID within their facilities that they live in. So after we began those services again in March 2021, we began changing our model. So prior to COVID, we would bring a whole boatload of books, bags and bags of books with us so that they would all browse. We kind of flipped that model completely on its head and moved to a more patron-centered experience where they tell us what they're looking for based on genres, specific titles, if they want a specific material type, so large print, audiobooks, or regular print. And we take all of that information in, and our outreach services assistant provides excellent reader's advisory. Sometimes it takes a little while to get it quite right, but they tell us how many items that they're looking for, and we bring those hand-delivered to them at each of their sites. So we visit 6 locations. We have that delivery route split up between 2 days. We actually started a new model where we are bringing a deposit library, which is the first that we've done at the high-rise location in West Fargo, where we bring 20 books with a variety of items included in order for anybody in that building to check those items out, all based on an institutional library card. So the organization checks them out, and everybody in the residence benefits from that. So with that change in that service model, we have seen greater retention of our patrons per site. So we've seen the number of patrons that we serve go up, and we've seen the number of books that they read go way, way up, and checkout circulation items has significantly increased with this change. Although we kind of switched that model, we didn't have a standard operating agreement with each of those locations. Before, it was very much like, oh, you want books? We will bring you books. And we realized there's some loss associated with that. So creating a formal agreement in place with each of those locations, setting clear expectations of communication, if there's any weather issues, or if there is something that's lost and we can't quite find it, where do we reconcile that information? So we put a memorandum of understanding in place with each of those locations, creating a clear expectation for each party involved, and then ramifications for things that either we do wrong or that they might do wrong. So making sure that we can hold each other accountable with that agreement. With that, we also launched 2 services, our memory care kits that are currently only circulating to those outreach sites, but we're hoping to launch those later this year to the general public as well. They have been incredibly popular with the sites who have memory care units and staff dedicated to providing those services to the different locations. There have been a mix of things. So we have things that engage all senses. So we have auditory, smells, things like that, touch and feel, as well as a bunch of puzzles, because those are quite fun. There's a mix of tools that are within each of those kits. We've also launched activity packets for each of the locations that have an activities director at each site. So we create a packet that's themed each month with crosswords, reading or poetry discussion activities, a variety of games and things or crafts that those locations can then replicate and then distribute to all of their residents that are interested. So it's been a great model to extend that programming element without having a really large staff lift in order to deliver those services. When we look at the patron feedback, we did a focus group with each of the sites that were interested. So 3 of our 6 sites were able to provide time with us so we could hang out with our patrons and ask them questions about this service. We have identified a big part of that is convenience. A lot of these folks can't drive any longer or don't like to drive any longer. That creates ways for them to congregate together and gives them a use to come out of their rooms and meet their neighbors, as well as that tailored service. So having that ability to get the items that they really want versus the luck of the draw of the books that we maybe brought in the past. The quotes that are here are things that word for word those folks have said to me. I cannot imagine life without the library visiting. The library visit gets me out of my room and socializing with neighbors. It was a way for us to kind of hear those folks and what really the library is doing to impact their lives. As we look at reach, we have continued to climb and climb. Obviously, 2023 is only part of this year, but we're on pace to exceed the numbers that we had for 2022 for our service outreach for these numbers. And just looking at circulation, we are continuing to rise. So you can see a little bit about when we go to each of those locations and what those services look like, but I'll pause here if you guys have any questions about that service that we provide.
It's a great service.
Yeah, I love the service. Thank you.
Yes, of course.
All right. Because of our amended agenda, we have come to the end of our board meeting. Any other comments?
Are there any more public comments, just
Yeah.
in general?
We did state that we'd have any other public comments. So are there any other public comments before we, yeah?
Just 7 part-time people need no benefits package. That's a huge thing.
Yep, thank you.
So I don't know if we want that repeated.
Yeah, we will need it repeated on the microphone.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, just Wendy Robinson, just would say that 7 part-time people is no benefits packages. So.
Okay.
And we have asked if we can take like extra hours or whatever. We're always told we have to keep below that 20 hours in a week because of the benefits, but none of us take benefits or would take benefits. Is that something that is still hard and fast?
I can certainly add that to my HR question. Yes.
Yeah, because then some of those gaps when we're between staff could be filled if people could do more than 20 hours a week.
Okay.
I can help answer that question, actually. That is the federal requirement for providing a pension to city employees. It's an average of, it has to be under 20 hours for 20 weeks in a 52 or 26 week period. So that is a federal requirement.
All right.
Thank you, Kirsten. Other public comments as we come to the end?
Lisa Stoffer, I just wanted to thank you for listening to us. We appreciate a place where we can have a voice and think that we're being heard. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll move to adjourn.
Second?
We have a motion, a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is closed.